Okay, students. So today we are going to start with AS level physics, May June 2025, paper 1, variant 2. This is a 1 hour 15 minutes ka paper. Let's start with it. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We have some data points here. Let's zoom in a bit. Okay. So what must all physical quantities have? क्या चीज सारी physical quantities के पास होनी चाहिए? What must all physical quantities have? All physical quantities must have a magnitude and a unit. Always remember that. All physical quantities must have a magnitude and a unit. D is your answer. What is 0.25 kilonewton millimeter minus 2 expressed in Newton meter minus 2? Okay, so let's write it. 0.25. We have to convert 0.25 kilonewton. Since it's millimeter minus 2, I am bringing it into the denominator. We have to convert this into Newton divided by meter square. Right off the bat, I can realize I will multiply this by 100 to convert it into Newtons. So 0.25 multiplied by 100. Why? Multiplied by 1000, sorry. 0.25 will be multiplied by 1000. Why? Because you have to convert this kilo into Newton. Kilo can be replaced by 10 raised to the power of 3 or 1000, no matter what you use. अब डिनोमिनेटर में आ जाओ बेटा. डिनोमिनेटर में you have to convert millimeter square into meter square. Whenever we go from millimeter to meter, you multiply by 10 raised to the power of minus 3. If you go from millimeter square to meter square, by what factor will you multiply? 10 raised to the power of minus 3 ka whole square, that is 10 raised to the power of minus 6. So multiply here by 10 raised to the power of minus 6. When this 10 raised to the power of minus 6 will come into the numerator, the answer will become something like this. 0.25 into 1000 into 10 raised to the power of 6. I have taken this negative power to the top. This becomes positive. This is 10 ki power 3. This is 10 ki power 6. 0.25 into 10 ki power 3 into 10 ki power 6. This is equal to 0.25 into 10 ki power 9. Now, is there any option like this? 0.25 into 10 ki power 9? Let's see. Let's see this last option. If I write it, currently this is 250000. Let's write it like this. Let's take the decimal place, 1 place backward, 2 place backward, 3 place backward, 4 place backward, 5 place backward, 6 place backward, 7 place backward, 8 place backward, and 9 place backward. अगर डेसिमल को 9 प्लेसेस पीछे ले जाएंगे तो ये भी 0.25 into 10 raised to the power of 9 ही बन जाएगा. D is your answer. Simple. So what have I done here? किलो को रिमूव करने के लिए आई मल्टीप्लाई बाय 10 raised to the power of 3 और 1000. मिलीमीटर स्क्वायर से मीटर स्क्वायर में जाने के लिए आई मल्टीप्लाइड बाय 10 raised to the power of minus 6. Make sure that millimeter square and meter square are in the denominator. When this power will come in the numerator, it will become 10 raised to the power of positive 6. 10 raised to the power of positive 3 multiplied by 10 raised to the power of positive 6. This is your final answer, 0.25 into 10 raised to the power of 9. This will be your option D. Simple. A student calculates the density of a solid cube in an experiment. Okay. The measured mass is this, and the measured. Okay, let me minimize this. I think this has gotten into the question. Let's minimize it. Let's keep it here. Okay. So the mass of the sphere, mass of the cube, sorry. This is a cube. The mass of the cube is this, and the length of each side is this. Okay. What is the density of the steel? You have to calculate the density of the steel. How will you do that? Density is equals to what? Mass over volume. Okay. What is the mass? 975. How will you calculate the volume? This is a cube. बेटा ये क्यूब है. क्यूब का वॉल्यूम याद है किस तरह निकलता है? The volume of a cube is equals to the length cube. Length क्या है आपकी? 50 millimeter. You want your density in gram per cm cube. You will have to convert this length into सेंटीमीटर. 50 मिलीमीटर को आपको सेंटीमीटर में कन्वर्ट करने के लिए डिवाइडेड बाय 10 कर दो. दिस बिकम्स 5 सेंटीमीटर. एल क्यूब. व्हाट इज योर वैल्यू ऑफ एल? 5 का क्यूब. लेट्स कैलकुलेट दिस. Where is my calculator? 1 second. 975 divided by 125, that is 5 का cube. Your answer for density comes out to be what? 7.8 grams per cm cube. बेटे देखो यहाँ पे एक दो बातें नोटिस करने वाली. First of all, I kept the mass in grams. Why? Because I want the density ka unit in grams. Also, I converted the length from millimeter into centimeter. Why? Because I want the density ka unit to be in centimeter minus 3. So this is how you check the units, which units you want. Okay. Density आ गई आपकी 7.8. Now we have to calculate the percentage uncertainty in density. How will we do that? हाँ जी, कैसे निकालेंगे percentage uncertainty in density? Any ideas, geniuses? Can you realize density का ये formula given है? Yep. If I write density is equals to mass over volume, volume is equals to what? L cube. You can say that the percentage uncertainty in density is equals to the percentage uncertainty in mass plus 3 times the percentage uncertainty in length. सर यहाँ पे आपने 3 times क्यों लिख दिया? Because length की power 3 है तो percentage uncertainty of length भी 3 times हो जाएगी. Now you have to calculate the percentage uncertainty in density. How will you calculate the percentage uncertainty in mass? 10, that is the absolute uncertainty, divided by the actual value, that is 975. Okay. Multiplied by 100, since you have to calculate the percentage. Plus 3. What is the absolute uncertainty of length? 1. What is the actual value of length? 50. Multiplied by 100. Beta, what does your answer for uncertainty comes out to be? Percentage uncertainty of density का आंसर क्या आ रहा है बेटे? कैलकुलेट करो जरा. Can anyone in the chat tell me the answer by putting it in a calculator? AS level में calculator इस्तेमाल करना बहुत important skill है. This comes out to be 7%. B is your answer. Simple. बढ़ते, let's move ahead. The time period of a pendulum is given by this, where L is the length of the pendulum, G is the acceleration of free fall. The equation is homogeneous. Homogeneous का मतलब क्या है? The SI base units on left hand side is equals to the SI base units on the right hand side. ये होता है homogeneous का मतलब. So let's see this equation. T is equals to 2 pi L over G power n. What is the unit of T? T is the time period. T के units क्या हो गए? Seconds. बेटा 2 pi is a constant. You will ignore this constant. Okay. L क्या है? Length. What will be the units of length? Meters. G क्या है? Acceleration of free fall. क्या units हो जाएंगे? Acceleration of free fall के ms minus 2 power n. M cancel out. What will your final equation look like? S is equals to 1 over s minus 2 power n. Bring this s minus 2 to the top side. S is equals to s2 power n. S की power 1 is equals to s की power 2n. Since the bases are same, you can equate the power 1 is equals to 2n. N is equals to half. C is your answer. Simple. Radio waves can be used to measure the distance between the Earth and planet Jupiter. A pulse of radio wave is emitted from the surface of Earth. The pulse reflects from the surface of Jupiter and is detected on Earth. Okay. The time between emitting and receiving the pulse is 3960. अच्छा बेटा देखो हो ये रहा है, हो ये रहा है, ये आपका planet Earth है. This is your planet Earth and this is your planet Jupiter. हो ये रहा है कि a radio wave is being emitted from the surface of the Earth. The pulse goes, hits the surface of Jupiter and then reflects back towards the Earth. इस पूरी जर्नी का टाइम क्या है? 3960. Can you realize radio waves are which types of waves? रेडियो वेव्स होती है इलेक्ट्रोमैग्नेटिक वेव, जिनकी स्पीड क्या हो जाएगी 3 × 10⁻⁸ meters per second. So you can say the speed or the velocity is 3 × 10⁸ meters per second. Time क्या है 3960 seconds. Can you calculate the distance between Jupiter and Earth? First of all, let's calculate the distance. Distance is equal to speed into time. The speed is 3 × 10⁸ multiplied by 3960. What does your distance comes out to be? Distance क्या आ जाता है बेटा? Distance क्या आ जाता है? Distance क्या आ जाता है बच्चों? If you realize distance क्या आ जाता है यहाँ पे, any geniuses in the chat? Distance निकालो 3 × 10⁸ multiplied by 3960. Distance आपका क्या आ गया बच्चों? 1.188 into 10 raised to the power of 12. Now you have to realize, अब आपने ये realize करना है कि ये distance क्या है? Complete journey का, जाने का भी distance है और आने का भी distance है. This distance d is the total distance of the journey. The distance to go from Earth to Jupiter and to come from Jupiter to Earth. This is the total distance. You only have to calculate the distance between Earth and Jupiter. आपने सिर्फ once या सिर्फ एक दफा का डिस्टेंस निकालना है. बेटा देखो अभी जो डिस्टेंस आया है, अगर थोड़ा सा गौर करो, दिस डिस्टेंस इज ऑफ द इंटायर जर्नी. This distance is of the entire journey going from here to here. You only need the distance of one time going from Earth to Jupiter. What will you do? You will divide this by 2. 1.188 into 10 is the power of 12 meters divided by 2. What will your answer come out to be? 5.94. 10 is the power of 11 meters. Can you convert this into kilometers? Because हमारे आंसर्स यहाँ पे किलोमीटर्स में है. Obviously B and D will get cancelled out. A और C का जो आंसर है वो किलोमीटर है. Can you convert it into kilometers? Yes, divided by 1000. This becomes 5.94 into 10 is the power of 8 kilometers. A is your answer. Simple. Let's further move ahead. The graph shows the variation with time t of the velocity of a car. Okay, so the velocity versus time graph is given. Which statement is correct? Which statement is correct? The car accelerates for 2 seconds, then stops for 4 seconds, and then reverses. No. The car accelerates at 12 meters per second for 2 seconds. No. The car travels a distance of 36 meters in first 4 seconds. Now you have to remember, whenever you see the velocity time graph, the area under velocity time graph is equals to your distance or displacement, whatever you want to say. Let's check out the distance traveled in the first 4 seconds. This is the first 4 seconds. Let's calculate the area under the graph for the first 4 seconds. बेटा ये पूरा area under the graph निकाल लें. Can we calculate this पूरा का पूरा area under the graph? Yes. This is what? This looks like a trapezium. This is a trapezium. Can you calculate the area under the graph of this trapezium? हाँ जी, इस trapezium के अंडर का जो area है या इस ग्राफ के अंदर जो trapezium है, can you calculate the area for that? Yep, easily. कैसे निकालेंगे? 1/2 into sum of parallel sides. What are parallel sides? This one is a parallel side with a value of 4. This one is a parallel side with a value of what? 4 minus 2. Your ending point is 4, starting point is 2. इस पैरेलल साइड की लेंथ क्या हो जाएगी 2 multiplied by the height, that is 12. 1 6 into 6, this comes out to be 36 meters. I guess this option is correct. Let's move ahead. A solid object of 1 kg falls vertically downwards in a vacuum. Okay, so let's say this is an object of 1 kg. What will be the weight of this object? Weight is equal to 1 into 9.81. This comes out to be 9.81 Newton as your weight. Okay. When the speed of the object is 60 meters per second. Okay, so your initial speed is 60 meters per second. An additional force of 50 Newton suddenly starts to act vertically upwards on the object. अच्छा जी, आपके ऊपर एक upward force act कर रही है, that is 50 Newton. Okay. What is the speed of the object after 2 seconds? After the additional force starts to act. Okay, so we have to calculate the speed of the object once the additional force starts acting. So बेटा अगर अपवर्ड डायरेक्शन में 50 न्यूटन की फोर्स है, डाउनवर्ड डायरेक्शन में 9.81 न्यूटन की फोर्स है, कैन यू कैलकुलेट द रिजल्टेंट फोर्स? यप, रिजल्टेंट फोर्स इज व्हाट? अच्छा, फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, since this is a question that involves vector quantities, can you see force is a vector quantity and speed is a scalar quantity? No problem in that, but force is a vector quantity. Whenever you have questions involving vector quantities, what will you do? You will define the axes. You can say that the upward forces are positive, downward forces are negative. Okay. So how will you calculate the resultant force? The upward force, that is of 50 Newton, is considered to be positive. This is negative 50 minus 9.81. What does the resultant force comes out to be? 50 minus 9.81. The resultant force comes out to be 40.19 Newton. Resultant force का formula क्या होता है? Mass into acceleration. What is the mass? 1. 1 into acceleration is equal to 40.19. Acceleration क्या आ जाती है? 40.19 ms minus 2. Now you have the acceleration. This acceleration is acting upwards. बेटा acceleration की direction क्या है? Upward. Why? Because the resultant force will act upward because the higher force is in the upward direction. देखो इसको वापस सुनो. Your resultant force is acting upward. Why? Because we have a larger force in the upward direction. Your resultant force is acting upward because we have a larger force in the upward direction. If your resultant force is acting in the upward direction, your acceleration will also be acting in the upward direction. Easy peasy. This is your acceleration. Now, आपकी initial speed क्या थी बेटा? 60. But can you realize this initial speed was of an object moving downwards? ये speed क्या थी? 60 meters per second moving downward. Hence, if I convert this into velocity, this will get a negative sign. देखो, स्पीड आपकी डाउनवर्ड डायरेक्शन में लग रही थी, राइट? डाउनवर्ड वेक्टर्स को हमने नेगेटिव अज्यूम किया है, सो दिस कम्स आउट टू बी नेगेटिव 60 meters per second as your initial velocity. What is your acceleration? Acceleration is upward direction में 40.19 meters per second square. What is your time? 2 seconds. You have to calculate the speed of the object after 2 seconds. V is equals to u plus 80. V is equals to u क्या है? Minus 60 plus acceleration क्या है? 40.19 to the time that is 2. Minus 60 plus round about 80. This comes out to be 20 meters per second. This is your speed A. Can you realize this velocity is positive? Positive का मतलब क्या है? This velocity is acting in the upward direction. A is your answer. Let me explain this again to you guys because here the examiner wanted you guys to be confused. तो हम थोड़ा सा इसको वापस explain करते हैं ताकि आप कभी भी confuse ना हो इस सवाल में वापस. Okay. If you analyze what is happening, you have an object that is initially traveling downwards with a velocity of what? 60 ms minus 1. एक ऑब्जेक्ट है जो कि डाउनवर्ड ट्रैवल कर रहा है विद अ वेलोसिटी ऑफ 60 ms minus 1. ऑब्जेक्ट पे जो डाउनवर्ड फोर्स लग रही है दैट इज ऑफ वेट 9.81 और अपवर्ड फोर्स लग रही है वो क्या है? 50 न्यूटन. Can you calculate the resultant? Yes, 50 minus 9.81. Resultant force comes out to be 40.19 Newton. Resultant force का फॉर्मूला क्या होता है? एम ए. एम आपका 1 है, एक्सेलरेशन आ गई 40.19 ms minus 1. Now the entire question revolves around vector quantities. If there are vector quantities, always remember in your question you will define the axes. The upward vectors as positive, downward as negative. Acceleration upward act करिए, that's why it is positive. Can you realize when the object was falling downwards, the speed is 60. This is acting downward. Hence, this speed, when converted into velocity, becomes negative. बेटा जो आपकी स्पीड है 60 मीटर पर सेकेंड की, वो नीचे की तरफ एक्ट कर रही है, और नीचे की तरफ एक्ट करने वाले वेक्टर्स को हम नेगेटिव का साइन देते हैं. So you have negative 60 meters per second acceleration. Is this time? Is this? Can you calculate the velocity now? 20 meters per second. This positive sign indicates that the velocity is acting upwards. Simple. I hope this question is clear. If you have any question, you can further ask. A stone is thrown and follows a curved path. This is a basic projectile motion. Air resistance is negligible. How does the path have this shape? We will say the stone has a constant horizontal acceleration. No, the stone has a constant horizontal velocity and a constant vertical acceleration. B is your answer. बेटा हमेशा हमेशा आपने क्या बात याद रखनी है? What do you have to remember? Projectile motion में you have what? You have a constant horizontal velocity and constant vertical acceleration. B is your answer. Simple. आगे बढ़ते हैं. A rocket engine ejects 90 kg of exhaust gases per second at a velocity of 190 meters per second relative to the rocket. What is the force acting on the rocket due to the ejected gas? बेटा एक रॉकेट है जो कि 90 केजी की एग्जॉस्ट गैसेस रिलीज कर रहा है एट अ वेलोसिटी ऑफ 190. You have to calculate the force. How will you calculate the force? Force is equals to change in momentum over change in time. What is your change in momentum? 90 into 190. What is your time per second? Time हो जाएगा 1 second. Can you calculate the force? The force comes out to be, I think, according to my mental math, there should be somewhere around 17. Yeah. 1700 Newton. That is 17 kilo Newton is your answer. B is your answer. Which statement does not describe an elastic collision between two objects? So कौन सा ऐसा statement है जो elastic collision नहीं define करता? The relative speed of approach is equal to the relative speed of separation. ये तो define करता है. The total kinetic energy remains conserved. ये भी define करता है. The total kinetic energy of the objects reduce. ये define नहीं करता. In an elastic collision, the total kinetic energy always remains conserved or constant. A cyclist is riding at constant speed on a level road. Okay. According to Newton's third law of motion, what is equal and opposite to the backward push of the back wheel on the road? देखो ये हमारा, if I draw this, let's draw this. Teaching students is really, really a tiring job. If anyone is thinking of becoming a teacher, I would advise otherwise. What is equal and opposite to the backward push of the back wheel on the road? अच्छा back wheel जो है वो रोड पे इस तरह की फोर्स लगा रहे हैं. ओके ठीक है. बैक व्हील इज अप्लाइंग अ फोर्स ऑन द रोड लाइक दिस. ओके. What will be, according to Newton's third law, an equal and opposite reaction to this? The force exerted by the cyclist? No. The forward push by the road on the back wheel? Yes. रोड अगर बैक व्हील पे फॉरवर्ड डायरेक्शन में फोर्स लगाएगा, this is completely according to Newton's third law. चलो जी, let's move ahead. A stone is released from rest and falls a long distance in air. Whenever you are falling a long distance in air, बेटा जब भी ये कीवर्ड आ जाए ना, लॉन्ग डिस्टेंस इन एयर, दिस इज रेफरिंग टू व्हाट? टर्मिनल वेलोसिटी. जब भी आपका स्टोन, आपका ऑब्जेक्ट लॉन्ग डिस्टेंस इन एयर फॉल कर रहा है, दैट इज रेफरिंग टू टर्मिनल वेलोसिटी. Which graph could show the variation of acceleration of the stone with time? एक्सेलरेशन को क्या होता है टर्मिनल वेलोसिटी में? इट स्टार्ट्स फ्रॉम 9.81 ms minus 2 and it goes to 0. Any graph like that? D is your answer. An empty cart. Okay, so we have an empty cart. Okay, that is moving along a horizontal track at constant velocity. Resistive forces on the cart are negligible. Okay, a heavy rock is dropped into the cart. ठीक है, एक heavy rock को हम cart में drop कर रहे हैं. The cart continues to move horizontally with the rock inside. How does the momentum and kinetic energy of the cart with the rock inside compare with the momentum and kinetic energy of the empty cart? हमने बताना है कि जब आपका रॉक काट के अंदर चले गया है, तो हाउ डज द मोमेंटम एंड काइनेटिक एनर्जी कंपेयर विद द इनिशियल मोमेंटम एंड काइनेटिक एनर्जी? First of all, if you have studied principle of conservation of momentum, बेटा principle of conservation of momentum अगर पढ़ा हो तो you know momentum always remains conserved. So the momentum will remain same. A and B will get cancelled out. And since the rock is falling inside the cart, both these objects are combining together. बेटा हमने collisions के टॉपिक में ये पढ़ा था कि अगर दो balls collide करें और आपस में मिल जाएं, this is a type of inelastic collision. In inelastic collision, the kinetic energy reduces. C is your answer. Let me give you the reasoning again. Whenever two objects combine together after collision, that is known as an inelastic collision. Inelastic collision में आपकी kinetic energy कम हो जाती है. C is your answer. Let's further move ahead. Okay. A wooden block is held stationary in a container of water using a string that is attached both to the wooden block and the bottom of the container. ठीक है, string है जो कि wooden block से attached है और bottom of the container से भी attached है. The wooden block has a mass of m, volume of v. The water has a density of rho. The acceleration of free fall is g. What is the magnitude of force acting on the block due to the tension in the string? Okay, so let's mark the forces. First of all, tension acts away from the object. This is your weight. What will be the upward force? Up thrust. Can you realize that the block is held stationary? Stationary का मतलब क्या होता है? You are in equilibrium. Equilibrium का मतलब क्या होता है? Resultant force is zero. Resultant force का मतलब क्या? Resultant force is zero का मतलब क्या होता है? Up forces is equal to the down forces. What is the up force? Up thrust. What is the down force? Weight plus tension. You have to calculate tension. What is the formula of up thrust? Rho G volume. What is the formula of weight? Mg minus कर दो. What does your tension comes out to be? Rho G V minus Mg. D is your answer. Let's further move ahead. A square sign of uniform density has mass 2.4 kg and side lengths of 0.8 meter. ठीक है. The sign is supported by a hinge along its top edge. There is no friction in the hinge so that the sign hangs from it in equilibrium at an angle of 15 degree to the vertical as shown. What is the moment about the hinge of the weight of the sign? Actually, but first of all, can you realize the square sign is of uniform density? That means the weight will be acting in the middle here. What will be the value of weight? Weight की value क्या हो जाएगी? Mass, that is 2.4 into gravitational field strength, that is 9.81. Weight की value क्या आ गई भाई? This comes out to be 23.5 Newton. Now you have to calculate the distance from the hinge to the weight. You have to calculate this distance. How will you do that? Very, very easy. बेटा अगर ये पूरी लेंथ ऑफ द रॉड 0.86 मीटर है तो हाफ लेंथ ऑफ द रॉड क्या हो जाएगी? हाँ जी, अगर पूरी लेंथ 0.86 है तो हाफ लेंथ क्या हो जाएगी? 0.43 meters. This is 15 degrees. Can you calculate this x? या देखो ट्रायंगल कुछ इस तरह से बना हुआ है. Like this. You have to calculate this x. The hypotenuse is 0.43. The angle is 15 degrees. Basically, you are given the hypotenuse. You are given the angle. You have to calculate what? Perpendicular. कर सकते हो. Which ratio will you apply? Which ratio or trigonometric ratio, if you are more technical, will we apply here? We will say sine of 15 is equal to what? Perpendicular क्या है? X divided by hypotenuse, that is 0.43. Can you calculate the perpendicular? Yes, 0.43 sine 15 is equal to your value of x. Can we calculate that? This comes out to be 0.11 meters. You have the perpendicular distance, you have the force, multiply both of them to calculate the moment. Moment is equal to 23.5 into 0.11. Calculate करो बेटा क्या आंसर आता है. This comes out to be 2.6 Newton meter. 15 का आंसर is A. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. आगे बढ़ते हैं बच्चों. Okay, so let's see this question. A block is submerged vertically in a liquid. The four diagram shows the block viewed from the side. Which diagram shows to scale the force exerted on equal areas of the block by the liquid? अच्छा जी. So we have a block that is submerged in the liquid. These are the four diagrams. We have to tell which shows the forces marked correctly. First of all, I will cancel out option B. Why? Because there are no forces on the sides. बेटा side पे forces नहीं है ऐसा कैसे हो सकता है? Whenever you are immersing a object in a uh, whenever you are immersing an object in a liquid, there are forces on all four sides. So I will cancel out B immediately. Secondly, I will look closely now. The force which is exerted on any side is directly proportional to the pressure, and in a liquid the pressure depends on what? In a liquid the pressure depends on the height. ठीक है, जो हमारा लिक्विड का प्रेशर होता है that depends on height, and that correspondingly tells us the amount of force. बेटा लिक्विड में जो प्रेशर होता है दैट इज डायरेक्टली प्रोपोर्शनल टू हाइट, और जितना ज्यादा प्रेशर होगा उतनी ज्यादा फोर्स. कैन यू रियलाइज हियर at the top surface we have a smaller arrows? Why? Because we are at a lesser depth. We are at a lesser depth, hence we have a smaller arrows, a smaller force. Here at the bottom surface we have a greater depth, greater force, greater pressure. Okay, same is the case for C and D. Now in D, there is an issue. Can you see on the sides? Sides पे can you realize the forces are equal? बेटा साइड्स पे अगर आप रियलाइज करो तो क्या हो रहा है? ऑप्शन डी में अगर आप साइड पे रियलाइज करो, दिस फोर्स, दिस फोर्स, दिस फोर्स, दिस फोर्स, दे हैव बिकम इक्वल. हाउ कुड दैट बी पॉसिबल? जैसे जैसे आप नीचे जा रहे हो आपकी डेप्थ या हाइट तो बढ़ती जा रही है, फोर्स बढ़नी चाहिए थी. दिस इज नॉट पॉसिबल. डी इज नॉट योर आंसर. बेटा देखो मैंने ये एक्सप्लेन किया कि ऑप्शन डी में आपके राइट साइड वाले एरोस हैव बिकम कांस्टेंट. दैट इज नॉट पॉसिबल बिकॉज जैसे जैसे आप नीचे जाते जा रहे हो आपकी डेप्थ बढ़ती जा रही है, हाइट बढ़ती जा रही है, फोर्स बढ़ती जानी चाहिए. दैट्स नॉट हैपनिंग. द एरोस हैव बिकम इक्वल. Now let's look at option C and A. These are the only two options which we have. Now in option C, there is a mistake. Let's suppose this is your height, h1, and let's suppose this is your height, h2. Obviously, you can realize h2 is greater than h1. बेटा height h2 is much greater than h1. लेकिन देखो एग्जामिनर ने यहाँ पे क्या किया है, ये वाला एरो कंसिडरेबली छोटा बनाया है कंपेयर टू द एरो एट हाइट h1. जो साइडवेज पे एरो है एट अ ग्रेटर हाइट इज लेस कंपेयर टू द एरो एट द टॉप व्हिच हैज अ लेसर हाइट. हाउ इज दैट पॉसिबल? देखो बेसिकली मैं ये कहना चाह रहा हूँ, कैन यू रियलाइज हाइट 2 इज ग्रेटर कंपेयर टू हाइट 1, या डेप्थ h2 is greater than depth h1? If depth h2 is greater, how can it have a smaller force? इसका arrow should at least be greater or comparable to the top वाला arrow. This also gets cancelled out. A is your only remaining option. Let's further move ahead. The diagram shows a couple. Okay. How is the torque of a couple calculated? Perpendicular distance between the forces and the magnitude of one of the forces. B is your answer. Easy peasy. आगे बढ़ते हैं. 16 was a difficult question, but ये बाकी सारे आसान. A ball of mass 1.2 kg travels horizontally at a speed of this. The ball hits a cushion and comes to rest in a horizontal distance. So this, what is the work done by the cushion? बेटा क्वेश्चन क्या वर्क डन कर रहा है? क्वेश्चन इज एब्सॉर्बिंग ऑल द काइनेटिक एनर्जी. ऑल द काइनेटिक एनर्जी गेट्स कन्वर्टेड इनटू द वर्क डन. कैन यू कैलकुलेट ऑल द काइनेटिक एनर्जी? 1 upon 2 into mass of 1.2 into the speed of 3 का square. Can you calculate this? हाँ जी, this comes out to be 5.4 joules as your answer. Simple. आगे बढ़ते हैं जी. A box of mass 4.9 kg is pushed at constant velocity. What does the word of constant velocity mean, बच्चों? Constant velocity का मतलब ये होता है upward forces are equal to the downward forces. Okay. Constant velocity का बच्चों मतलब क्या होता है? Upward forces is equal to downward forces from point P at the bottom of an inclined plane to point Q at the top. Point P से Q पे आप जा रहे हो, ठीक है? The box is pushed by a force of 64 Newton acting parallel to the slope. Okay, 64 Newton की upward force लग रही है. Okay. The slope is inclined at an angle of 20 degree to the horizontal and the box moves through a vertical distance of 5.8 meters. Okie dokie. What is the work done against frictional forces acting on the block between P and Q? अच्छा बेटा ब्लॉक आपका ऊपर की तरफ मूव कर रहा है, अप की तरफ मूव कर रहा है. व्हाट विल बी द फ्रिक्शनल फोर्सेस एक्टिंग डाउनवर्ड लाइक दिस? Also, can you realize the component of weight will also be acting downward? The component of weight mg sine theta will also be acting down the slope. Since it is a constant velocity scenario, the upward forces will be equal to the downward forces. Upward कौन सी force लग रही है? 64. आपका weight का component किस तरह निकालोगे? Mass is 4.9. G is what? G is 9.81 obviously into sine of 20 degree. You have to calculate the frictional force. Can you do that? Frictional force निकाल लोगे? Yes. 64 minus 4.9 into 9.81 into sine of 20. What does your answer comes out to be? Frictional force किसके equal आ गई है? 47.5 Newton. Perfect. Now you have to calculate the work done against frictional force. How will you do that? Work done against frictional force is equal to the frictional force multiplied by the distance. Which distance do you want? You want this entire distance from P to Q. बेटा ये क्या है? ये है आपका hypotenuse. This is your perpendicular. This is your angle theta. कौन सा trigonometric ratio लगा दें? We can apply sine of 20 is equals to perpendicular, that is 5.8, divided by the hypotenuse, that is the distance from P to Q. Hypotenuse या फिर P से Q का distance comes out to be 5.8 divided by sine of 20. Let's substitute it here. Frictional force क्या है बेटे? Frictional force अभी निकाली थी 47.5 multiplied by the distance 5.8 divided by sine of 20. Can you calculate the work done against friction? Yep. Multiplied by 5.8 divided by sine of 20. This comes out to be what? 806 joules. B is your answer. Simple. Which expression gives the efficiency of a system? Efficiency of a system निकालना है आपने, किस तरह निकालोगे? Useful energy output divided by the total energy input. C is your answer. Simple. आगे बढ़ते हैं. A student has a copper wire and a steel wire with equal lengths and cross section area. The student hangs identical loads on two wires. The extensions of the two wires are different. अच्छा जी, दोनों की extension different है, forces same है, length same है, and cross sectional area is also same. ठीक है. What else is written? The student calculates the stress, strain, and Young modulus of each wire. Which row identifies with a tick the calculated values that are equal for both wires? अच्छा जी. कौन सी वैल्यूज इक्वल होंगी फॉर बोथ वायर्स? बेटा अब आपको पता है स्ट्रेन क्या होता है? स्ट्रेन इज इक्वल टू एक्सटेंशन ओवर लेंथ. सिंस बोथ द वायर्स हैव डिफरेंट एक्सटेंशन, स्ट्रेन दोनों की डिफरेंट होगी, सो देयर विल बी नो टेक इन प्लेस ऑफ स्ट्रेन. यंग्स मॉड्यूलस आपको पता है क्या होता है? यंग्स मॉड्यूलस इज इक्वल टू स्ट्रेस ओवर स्ट्रेन. इफ स्ट्रेन फॉर बोथ द वायर्स इज डिफरेंट, अगर ये वैल्यू डिफरेंट है तो यंग्स मॉड्यूलस भी ऑब्वियसली डिफरेंट होगा. Let's see what happens to stress. Stress is equals to force over area. अब दोनों वायर्स की अगर फोर्स सेम है, एरिया सेम है, दिस इज सेम फॉर बोथ द वायर्स, दिस इज सेम फॉर बोथ द वायर्स, दैट मींस द स्ट्रेस फॉर बोथ द वायर्स विल बी सेम. A is your answer. Simple. Let's move ahead. Two springs X and Y stretch elastically. The graph shows the variation with extension x of the force applied to each spring. Okay. Which statement is correct? Okay, which statement is correct? When each spring is given the same extension, the energy stored in y is 4 times the energy stored in x. Let's calculate that. 20 Newton की force पे you are getting an extension of 10. So 10 Newton की force पे you will get an extension of 5. Now both of them have the same extension. Let's calculate the energy stored. Let's calculate the energy stored by spring X, that is this region. And let's calculate the energy stored by spring Y at an extension of 5 centimeter. Let's see how our answers correlate. Okay. So how will we calculate this area? 1 upon 2 into base, that is 5, divided by 100 to convert it into meters into the height. So ये आ जाएगा 0.5 into 0.05. This comes out to be 2 Newton. 2 joules, sorry. This is the energy, right? So this comes out to be 2 joules. Let's calculate the energy here. 1 upon 2 into the height into base, that is 5 divided by 100. Let's calculate this as well. This comes out to be energy यहाँ पे क्या आ गई 0.25 joules. The energy stored in X is 0.25 joules. The energy stored in Y is 2 joules. Can you realize the energy stored in Y is 8 times the energy stored in X? मतलब अगर 0.25 को मैं 8 से मल्टीप्लाई करूँ, I will get the energy stored in Y. Is there any option like that? For the same extension, the energy stored in Y is 8 times the energy stored in X. B is your answer. Which phrase describes the strain at which elastic limit on a stress strain graph? ठीक है. Which phrase describes the strain? कौन सा phrase describe कर रहा है strain at the elastic limit on a stress strain graph? The maximum strain below which Hooke's law is obeyed? No. The maximum strain below which deformation is plastic? No. The minimum strain? No. The minimum strain above which Hooke's law is? Yes. The strain at the elastic limit can be defined as the minimum strain above which plastic deformation will start. इससे ऊपर अगर आपका strain गया तो आपकी plastic deformation start हो गई. Okay, let's see this. This is a heavy question, I think. A teacher removes the turntable from a microwave and places a bar of chocolate in the oven. She then switches the oven on for a short time. A stationary wave is formed. Okay, a stationary wave is formed. When the chocolate is removed, the teacher observes that the two small sections of the melted chocolate are 6 centimeter apart with the unmelted chocolate in between. Okay, यहाँ पे melted chocolates के जो regions हैं वो 6 centimeter apart है. Each section of the melted chocolate is located at an antinode. ये भी antinode है आपका, ये भी antinode है. Perfect. Assume that the speed is this, you have to calculate the frequency. First of all, from antinode to antinode, what is the wavelength? Half lambda. This is 6 centimeter is equals to half lambda. Can you convert 6 centimeters into meters? Yes, 6 divided by 100 is equals to half lambda. 0.06 is equals to half lambda multiplied by 2. 0.12 meters is equals to your lambda. Simple. 0.12 meters is equals to your wavelength or lambda. Simple as that. Let's keep it somewhere here. Now, how will you calculate the frequency of the microwaves? Anji, how will you calculate the frequency of the microwaves? Very, very easy. You will say V is equals to F lambda. Velocity क्या है 3 into 10 is the power of 8. Frequency हमने निकालनी है. Wavelength क्या है 0.12. Can you calculate the frequency as 3 into 10 is the power of 8 divided by 0.12? Frequency क्या आ जाएगी? 3 into 10 is the power of 8 divided by answer 0.12. This comes out to be a very large number, that is 2.5 into 10 raised to the power of 9 hertz. 10 raised to the power of 9 किसके इक्वल होता है? गीगा. C is your answer. 24 का आंसर comes out to be C. Simple. A sound wave travels from left to right. The graph shows the variation of the displacement to the right of the particles in the sound wave with the distances at one instant. Which letter represents the center of compression? अच्छा जी, कौन सा letter represent कर रहा है center of compression को? So let's make the longitudinal wave. This is at the zero displacement. Make a point here. This is at the maximum displacement towards the right. Let's make it here. B is at a zero displacement again. C is the maximum displacement in the negative direction here. What is the center of compression? This thing. Option B. हमने क्या किया है बेटा, लॉन्गिट्यूडनल वेव के पार्टिकल्स को अकॉर्डिंगली बना लिया है. At a displacement of zero, the particles is here. At a displacement of maximum positive, the particles have moved towards the right. At a displacement of zero, again the particle is at B. At a displacement of maximum negative, the particles shift towards the left side. B is the center of compression. B is your answer. Actually, let's see this. A buzzer emitting a sound of frequency this. Okay, so this is what? Frequency of sound emitted is attached to a string and rotated in a horizontal circle. The linear speed is this. Okay, this is the speed of the object. This is the speed of the sound. What is the maximum frequency? Maximum frequency observe किस तरह निकालते हैं? Frequency of the sound multiplied by the speed of the sound divided by the speed of sound minus the speed of the object. Frequency of sound क्या है? 846. Velocity of sound क्या है? 340. Velocity of sound minus the velocity of the source 35. कर लो जरा क्या आंसर आता है. 846 into 340 divided by 340 minus 25. This gives you a value of 913. D is your answer. 26 का answer comes out to be D. Let's further move ahead. आगे बढ़ा जाए. Vertically polarized light of intensity I naught is incident normally on a polarizing filter. The transmission axis of the filter is at an angle theta to the plane of polarization of light. The intensity of light after passing through the filter is I naught. Okay. What is angle theta? Which formula will we apply? I is equals to I naught cosine square theta. I की value क्या है? I naught over 3 is equals to I naught cosine square theta. I naught cancel out. Take an under root on both sides. Under root 1 over 3 plus minus is equals to cosine theta. Take cosine inverse. Cosine inverse 1 over 3 under root is equals to your theta. What does your answer comes out to be? Cosine inverse under root 1 over 3. What does your answer comes out to be? 54 or 55 degrees is your answer. B is your answer. Let's further move ahead. Which statement compares the behavior of transverse and longitudinal waves? Only longitudinal waves can be diffracted. No. Only longitudinal waves can travel in free space. No. Only nah. D is the correct answer. Only transverse wave can be polarized. Simple. A student uses a diffraction grating to determine the wavelength of visible light from a source. The diffraction grating has 300 lines per millimeter. Okay. The student measures the angle theta of each order n of the intensity maxima. A graph of n against sine theta is plotted. The line of best fit is plotted and has a gradient of g. Which expression represents the wavelength in meter of the visible light? Okay. Do you remember this formula? D sine theta is equals to n lambda. Okay. Now, can you see the gradient of this graph is what? Change in y over change in x. Y axis पे क्या है? N. X axis पे क्या है? Sine theta. This is your gradient. Perfect. N divided by sine theta is your gradient. So let's take sine theta to the other side. D is equals to N divided by sine theta lambda. This n divided by sine theta किसके इक्वल हो जाएगा भाई? Gradient capital G. D is equals to capital G divided by D divided by capital G is equals to your wavelength. Now, how will you calculate the value of G? That's the entire mystery here. बेटा D होता है grating constant. D is your grating constant. How do you calculate D? D is equals to 1 divided by capital N. What is capital N? Capital N is number of lines in 1 meter. If you have 300 lines in 1 millimeter, how many lines will there be in 1 meter or 1000 millimeter? 1000 millimeter में कितनी lines होंगी? Calculated. X comes out to be 30,000. This is your capital N. Divided. आपके पास D की वैल्यू आ जाएगी 1 divided by 300,000. कैलकुलेट करो बच्चों, क्या आंसर आता है इसका? This comes out to be 3.3. 10 raised to the power of minus 6. Now, instead of this value of D, you can substitute this 3.3 into 10 raised to the power of minus 6 divided by capital G is equals to your wavelength. Any answers like that? C is your answer. 29 का answer is C. Easy peasy. आगे बढ़ते हैं जी. Two waves meet. Okay. What is not a necessary condition for the waves to produce a stationary wave? क्या चीज necessary नहीं है to produce a stationary wave? The wave must be of the same type. This is necessary. The wave must have same time period. The wave must have same wavelength. ये सब necessary है. However, it is not necessary that the wave must be traveling in the same direction. Okay. Light of a single wavelength is incident normally on a double slit. Interference fringes are observed on the screen. The distance from the double slit to the screen, that is capital D, is 0.6 meter. And the fringe separation X is 1.8 millimeter. The distance from the double slit to the screen increases by, देखो increase कर रहा है by this value. Okay. So first of all, let's write the equation. X is equal to lambda D over A. Can you realize if lambda and A are constant, X and D become directly proportional. Now, if X was 1.8 millimeter, D क्या था? 0.6 meters. अब D को आपने increase कर दिया है by 0.9. What will be the final value of D? 0.9 plus 0.6, that is 1.5 meters. 1.5 meters पे आपकी X की वैल्यू क्या होगी? कैलकुलेट कर लो, क्रॉस मल्टीप्लाई. 1.5 into 1.8 divided by 0.6. The value of X will come out to be 4.5 millimeter. C is your answer. Simple as that. Nothing complicated here. I multiplied. Acha. For those of you who are a little weak at maths, let me do it for you guys. I multiplied 1.5 by 1.8 divided by 0.6 is equals to your value. सर आपने यूनिट्स क्यों नहीं चेंज किए मिलीमीटर और मीटर को? ठीक है, why didn't you change millimeter into meters? Because I want my final answer of X to be in millimeter. That's why I didn't change the unit. C comes out to be 4.5 millimeters. A wire is made from a metal of constant resistivity. Okay, so resistivity is constant. There is a constant current in the wire. Which statement about the potential difference across the wire is correct? Okay. It is directly proportional to the length of the wire. It is inversely proportional to the length of the wire. It is directly proportional to the diameter. Okay, so let's do one thing. Potential difference is equals to current into resistance. Potential difference is equals to current की जगह क्या रख देते? Resistivity into length into area. Can you realize resistivity and current are constant? Resistivity and current are constant. Replace these two variables with a direct proportionality sign. Potential difference is directly proportional to length, inversely proportional to area. So, any answers? A is your answer. Potential difference is directly proportional to length. A will be your answer. Simple. Let's further move ahead. The current voltage characteristics for three electrical components are shown. Okay. Which component obeys Ohm's law? Any component which have a current versus voltage graph passing through the origin obeys Ohm's law. 33 का आंसर हो जाएगा D, 1 only. This also doesn't obey Ohm's law. This also doesn't. A resistor of resistance 200 ohm is connected to a supply that has a potential difference. So this, how many electrons pass in 4 seconds? Very easy. You have to calculate how many electrons pass in 4 seconds. First of all, first and foremost, can we calculate the current? V is equals to IR करके. Yes. V क्या है? 4. I हमें नहीं पता. Resistance 200 है. Can you calculate the current? 4 divided by 200 current क्या आ जाएगा? Calculate करो. 4 divided by 200 current comes out to be 0.02 ampere. What will be the charge passing in 4 seconds? Current, that is 0.02 into 4, that is 0.08 coulombs. This is the charge that passes through in 4 seconds. If one electron carries a charge of 1.610 is the power of minus 19 coulomb, 0.08 coulombs of charge, कितने electrons carry करेगा? Cross multiply 0.08 divided by 1.6, 10 is the power of minus 19. कितने number of electrons आ गए भाई? बताओ भाई जरा. अच्छा जी, let's read out this question. The diagram shows a cell of internal resistance 1R connected to a variable resistor. Okay, when the variable resistor has an initial resistance of 2R. अच्छा जी, variable resistor की initial resistance क्या है? 2R. The current in the cell is I. Okay, so you can say this is the current state. Current state में क्या है? या current state अच्छी बात नहीं लग रही मुझे. What you can do is original circuit ये कर देते हैं. Can you calculate the total resistance here? Yes, 2R plus 1R, that is equals to what? 3R. Okay. The current is I1 and the terminal potential difference is V1. Okay. Terminal potential difference is basically the voltage across this resistor. Can you convert this terminal potential difference into formulaic terms? Yes, current I1 into the resistance that is 2R. This comes out to be 2I1R. Okay, so this is the original circuit. Now the variable resistor is adjusted to a value of 4R. Okay, now this has moved to a value of 4R. So now in the new circuit, let's write it here. In the new circuit, what is your total resistance? R plus 4R, that is equals to 5R. ठीक है, अब न्यू रेजिस्टेंस न्यू सर्किट में आपकी रेजिस्टेंस क्या हो गई है? 5R. Okay. You have to calculate the current in the cell and the new potential difference across the cell. Very, very easy. Just focus on the board. Now, if your resistance has become 5R, इसका मतलब नया करंट क्या होगा? What will be the new current? हाँ जी. Would anyone like to tell what will be the new current if your resistance has become 5R? What was your initial resistance? 3R. Now you have jumped from a resistance of 3R to a resistance of 5R. हुआ क्या है? By what factor has your resistance increased? Your resistance has increased by a factor of 5/3. रेजिस्टेंस को अगर 5/3 के फैक्टर से मल्टीप्लाई कर देंगे तो you will get the new resistance, that is 5R. Do you remember this formula? Current is inversely proportional to resistance. If your resistance has increased by a factor of 5/3, your current will get divided by a factor of 5/3. Initial current क्या था? I1 divided by 5/3. 3 comes to the top side. The new current becomes what? 3/5 I1. What is the new value of current? 0.6 I1. Option A and B cancel out. Now, can you calculate the new terminal potential difference? Yep. This is equals to what? Current 0.6 I1 हो गया है. Resistance 4R है. This comes out to be 2.4 I1 R. बेटा इनिशियली आपका वोल्टेज क्या था? 2 I1R. नाउ इट इज 2.4 I1R. Can I substitute this somehow? Yep, yep. Can I substitute I1 R somehow here? Yes, I can do that. किस तरह करेंगे? थोड़ा सा सोचो, थोड़ा सा सोचो, I1 R को यहाँ पे किस तरह सब्स्टिट्यूट किया जाएगा? If you realize, initially V1 was equals to what? 2I1R. Can I make I1R the subject? Yes. V1 over 2 is equals to I1R. Let's substitute this I1R here. यहाँ पे. What will happen? The new voltage is equals to 2.4 into V1 divided by 2. ये 1 हो गया, ये 1.2 हो गया. The new voltage is 1.2 V1. D is your final answer. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. आगे बढ़ते हैं जी. 36 पे आ जाओ. The diagram shows four terminals. अच्छा जी, diagram four terminals show कर रही है हमें. Connected to a battery and two ammeters. Okay. The current in two ammeters are identical. इन दोनों में current identical है. That means we are looking for a series circuit. Which circuit within the box give this result? Which circuit within the box give this result? Probably B. Oh, probably D. Sorry. Because D creates a series circuit. ये देखो पूरा का पूरा series circuit बन जाएगा. Current in ammeter 1 will be equal to the current in ammeter 2. Others are creating a parallel circuit. Each of Kirchhoffs two law presume that some quantity is conserved. Which row states Kirchhoff's first law and name the quantity that is conserved? The algebraic sum of currents at a no. The algebraic sum of currents at a junction is zero. Huh, you can say that. The algebraic sum of currents at a junction is zero. Yes, you can say that. And which quantity is conserved? Charge. 37 का आंसर है. सॉरी, a brain freeze movement from my side. Kirchhoff first law की ये definition होती है. This is the quantity that is conserved. Two neutral isotopes are of the same element. Which statement is correct? They have a different number of neutrons and a different number of electrons. No, they have a different number of neutrons and the same number of protons. B is your answer. Isotopes में हमेशा number of neutrons change होते हैं, protons same होते हैं. What is the quark composition of a meson? Meson की quark composition क्या होती है? One quark and one anti-quark. Always remember that. Hadron की quark composition क्या होती है? तीन quarks कोई भी तरह के. A nucleus of carbon 12 contains 6 protons and 5 neutrons. Okay, carbon 11, 6 protons or 5 neutrons consider कर रहा है. The nucleus of, okay, so let's make this ना. Let's make this. Carbon 11 की configuration अगर मैं बनाऊँ, 11 will come here, proton numbers will come here. Okay. The nucleus of carbon 11 decays by beta positive emission. What happens in beta positive emission? Your proton number decreases by 1. This will become 5. Okay. What is the total number of up and down quarks in the product of the decay of this nucleus? Okay. So in the product, you have 11 mass number and 5 as your proton number. 5 are your protons in your product. How many neutrons do you have now? न्यूट्रॉन्स कितने हो जाएंगे? 11 minus 5 that is 6. तो ये फाइनल प्रोडक्ट में आपके पास 5 प्रोटॉन्स हैं, 6 न्यूट्रॉन्स है. प्रोटॉन्स की कॉर्क कॉम्पोजिशन क्या होती है? अप अप डाउन मल्टीप्लाइड बाय 5. न्यूट्रॉन की कॉर्क कॉम्पोजिशन क्या होती है? अप डाउन डाउन मल्टीप्लाइड बाय 6. तो अप अप मल्टीप्लाइड बाय 5, दिस इज 10 अप कॉर्क्स प्लस 5 डाउन कॉर्क्स प्लस 6 अप कॉर्क्स, 6 डाउन कॉर्क्स, 6 डाउन कॉर्क्स. टोटल अप कॉर्क्स क्या हो गए? 16. ये 10 है, ये 6 है, 16 हो गए. डाउन कॉर्क्स कितने हो गए? 12 और 5 17 डाउन कॉर्क्स. 16 17 का कोई आंसर है? बी इज योर आंसर. सिंपल, नथिंग कॉम्प्लिकेटेड. This marks the end of this paper. If you have any ambiguities, you can ask.